Hey everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Johnson, the Last Nighters, and the Last Nighters are part of the Launchpad Media Podcast Network. You can find our show and a bunch of other great shows worth checking out over at thelaunchpadmedia.com. This is episode 77 of the show on Tropic Thunder. Show notes and more at lastnighters.com/77. If you like what we do here, please give us some subscribes and reviews on the old iTunes/Apple podcasts, and that will get us higher up in the rankings and recommendations for other listeners because we want to get those earballs. And my co-host is Robert, and he would agree with me. I'm putting words in his mouth, just like booty sweat trickling down his throat. Right, Robert?
What's up, my beautiful people? Glad to be back on another episode. We got a fantastic recurring guest who hasn't been with us for a long, long time. I think what was the last time he was with us was the fantastic movie Dallas Buyers Club.
Dallas Buyers Club, yeah.
Yeah, also with the great Matthew McConaughey, just like Tropic Thunder here. So I think I'm sensing a theme here of McConaughey and at least 2.5 years apart. So maybe we'll do We Are Marshall in 2022.
There you go. But also, both of them are very medical, right?
Yeah. We're going to do some medical stuff here.
Sure.
That's right. It's Doc Anarchy. He is our returning guest. Doc, thank you for coming back, gracing us with your presence.
My absolute pleasure.
You have a prescription for a great episode tonight, I'm sure. Why don't you just give our audience a brief, reintroduction to who you are and what websites or website you want to have them review or check out?
Sure. I am a licensed physician specializing in physical medicine rehabilitation and also pain management, double board certified. And I'm starting a podcast called Honoring Ron Paul, starting very shortly. And that is going to be interviewing people who've started or created some type of a product because they've been interested in politics, freedom, libertarianism through Ron Paul. It'd be nice to have one area where people can see all the influence that the Ron Paul and Ron Paul campaigns have had on the world.
And that will be at honoringronpaul.com, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and I know the site is up now, and it's not yet with the podcast, but it has like people who have been influenced or sites who've been influenced by Ron Paul, and so there's links to those on there right now, I think.
Correct, and I'm looking for guests that would like to be on the podcast, so feel free to send that to support at honoringronpaul.com. Yes, and that should be on that webpage, support at honoringronpaul.com. If you want to be a guest, taking all comers.
All comers. Well, speaking of comers, I think during the pre-show you mentioned that you would extend the invitation for us to be your first guest on the show, and I think that we would love to do that. So
absolutely,
we'll mark it down on the calendar and get that rolling. Speaking of rolling, why don't we get into this discussion of Tropic Thunder here? And this was a movie that I think I mentioned to you in maybe December, I want to say, and you're like, I definitely want to do that one. And here it is, June. We're finally doing it. It just goes to show our calendar and I guess my ability to keep track of things. But here we are. So we start out with the Google description, and then we will get reactions to that from you and Robert. And then we'll go through notes that we have and just kind of have an organic back and forth. And it'll be about an hour or so. So here we go. Tropic Thunder came out in 2008, action adventure, 2 hour and 1 minute, 7 out of 10 on the IMDb, 81% Rotten Tomatoes, and 71% Metacritic. However, 92% of the Google users like it. The description is, while shooting a war film, the director attempts to liven up proceedings by dropping the principal actors into the middle of a real jungle, claiming he is going to capture their performances with hidden cameras. The hapless group, including drug-addled comedy star Jeff Portnoy and po-faced method man Kirk Lazarus, are completely unaware when a series of unfortunate events leads them into the middle of a real war zone. The release date was August 13th, 2008. The director and starring Ben Stiller. The budget was about 90 million, 94 million, something like that. And they doubled it with a box office take of $188.1 million. They got some awards, Critic Choice for the Best Comedy Movie Award and a Academy Award nomination for Best Actor in a Supporting Role. I believe for Robert Downey Jr. is his turn as a blackface actor in this film, which I'm sure will be not only a controversial subject to talk about tonight, but it was even back in 2008 when this was made. Robert, your reactions thus far, and then we'll go to Doc Anarchy.
Yeah, there's a few things I could respond to, but I guess the main thing I really just want to say is they talk about how they're dumping the people into a real war zone. Well, it's only a real war zone because they basically look like an invading army. They get mistaken for soldiers, or like DEA is what the guys originally think of. So what they're really doing is just defending their property and against an invading army. So this is really a mistaken property rights style thing, not like a war between what you would normally think of as a war between two states or two countries.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and we could discuss that a little bit further. Or do you want to stick with Google description action and then come back, loop around, and do a second?
We'll loop around. Yeah. We'll loop back around to it. Let's get Doc's take on the Google Descript.
I have no.
He has no words.
No words. I mean, it's just standard description. It is always interesting how they have to kind of squeeze these concepts. The thing I found that was interesting was the big discrepancy between viewers that enjoyed it versus the critics. I mean, I guess it had a critic score. What did you say, 72%, but 92% said they liked it.
Yeah, we've noticed that quite often in the movies that we've done, the episodes that we've done, that the critics are usually much harsher than audiences, and the audiences are the ones who pay the bills, quote unquote. So, I guess
you do kind of want the critics to be a little more jaded as far as what is good, but at the same time, I mean, this movie specifically is targeting the media themselves, and so I can easily see the critics feeling somewhat attacked because they're part of the movie establishment, and this is definitely very much a send up of movies in general, the self-importance of people in movies, and I just, this movie has a real special place in my heart.
All right, so what is the thing that makes it have such a special place? Did you have like a bad experience with like a clown when you were a kid? So you're like, anyone in the entertainment industry, I love seeing send-ups of that, because there are quite a few like war movies referenced, and the method actor, of course, Kirk Lazarus, played by Robert Downey Jr. He like fully embraces the role and like studies for months or years even to get into character.
Oh yeah.
I think that's very similar to like a Christian Bale type might do, or even McConaughey in his turn in Dallas Buyers Club, which you were on for before. He lost something like 60, 70 pounds to play that role. But Bale, who I just mentioned, he was in a movie called The Machinist, where he dropped 90 pounds. But then he was also Dick Cheney in Vice, and he was probably, I don't know, 250, something like that. So I mean, we've seen Christian Bale fluctuate like 2.5 times his body weight over the course of, I don't know, a dozen years.
It's amazing. And then he really got buff for Batman. He was ripped in that, and that really wasn't that far after The Machinist. You'll have to check the timing on that, when The Machinist was filmed and when Batman was filmed. I mean, there's got to be a ton of steroids that run around Hollywood. I mean, there's no way he put that on legitimately.
Speculation here.
Speculation. But that's just not...
Allegedly.
That's just not typically how the human body responds.
But yeah, what is the thing that makes this one have that special place in your heart?
Probably because I enjoyed it immensely and my brother did not. It comes simply down to sibling rivalry. He just didn't get it. I really enjoy things that are kind of over the top, overly dramatic. And just like starting at the very beginning of this, as that... it really hooked me right at the fake screen, fake previews. I just, they hit the notes so well. The deep voice talking about Scorcher and all of these different little things.
Scorcher 3, Scorcher 7.
Yes. He was asked to do it again. Yeah. But this time it's cold. Yeah. And then just that initial fighting scene where when I rewatched it, all the gibberish that they're yelling, it just brought up in my little side thing, the script. And they talk about the big thing that the media talked about was the blackface, but they had so much racist talk in that. It just that it kind of there's always those kind of regional nicknames in these movies and whatnot. And they just took that up to the extreme in that initial scene where it has Robert Downey Jr. saying, "Motown, get your Detroit jukebox Jerry Curl has." I mean, it is just so ridiculous. And saying things that are completely nonsensical in any type of situation, let alone a war situation. Like, "This is the last Christmas I spend with Victor Charlie up my ass." I mean, it's just, that's for Brooklyn, motherfucker. It's just, I don't know. It killed me. I can't. Some things just have a connection to you, and you can't really explain it.
All right. So another thing that's beyond words already. Now, with you liking the quotes like that, did you happen to stick around for the second song? I think it was in the credits. It's the Crystal Method song, but in it, they use the quotes as the lyrics, and it actually works pretty well. It's kind of fun.
Oh, wow. I did not. Oh, man. I got to go back and see that.
All right. So anyone listening, if you liked Crystal Method and you like these quotes from the movie, check it out in the, I believe it's the second song in the credits.
Speaking of songs, as I went back and watched this again, right at the beginning, the song that they were playing as the helicopters were kind of cruising in had something about, oh, shoot, I should have written it down. Something about judging him by his skin or because he was black or something like that, that really foreshadowed the Robert Downey Jr. character. And just the little things like that.
The Temptation song, I think. I couldn't tell you the name of it, but my wife and I, we're old now, and our hearing's not so good, especially when the kids are asleep in the next room. So we watch all the shows and movies that we watch with the closed captioning on, so we can read it as well. And sometimes it's hilariously wrong. But for the most part, you get kind of the gist of it. And in this one, they did show the lyrics. And I'm notorious for listening to a song and not really knowing what the words are. So it really helps me to see that. And I think I actually will try to find the lyrics for this Temptation song, because it actually does have a lot of discussion, as much as you can in the song, of racial tensions, I think probably in the 60s, back when that song was probably made, or the early 70s, Vietnam era type stuff. Now, the other thing I noticed was that this movie in the very beginning, it really did have that feel of an actual Vietnam era war movie. And the music definitely played into that. And, the choppers flying in, I felt like I was watching, what is it, Apocalypse Now, where they're all flying in. And I think that they did a really good job with that. And then also going over the top with the explosions and the gore.
Yes.
To the point where you couldn't help but laugh. And it's like almost fucked up, because, I mean, when the guy gets shot in the head, the radio operator guy.
Oh, it just keeps coming out.
The skies are blood. And, at first you're like, oh my gosh, that's horrific, but then it keeps going and keeps going and keeps going, to the point where then it becomes funny. And that, I don't know if that's like an indictment of me being a terrible person for laughing at that, but I think that's definitely one of the things that we're going for. Some things can be funny, and then you overdo it and it's not funny, and then you really overdo it and it's funny again. It's kind of like a boomerang horseshoe type thing. Yeah.
And just like when Ben Stiller is running to try to get on the plane, and they just keep shooting him and it just has all this little blood packets just exploding. It's like he gets shot 20 or 30 times, then he keeps getting up, and then he runs out there and grabs him and carries him, and then he does the blocks the grenade with his hands. I mean, just perfectly over the top.
Right. And of course the dialogue was, when we get back, I'm going to teach you how to juggle. Fingers are all mangled and messed up. But the scene where he's like getting shot in the back, that's like, I remember that from
Platoon,
yeah, with Willem Dafoe getting shot up as he's like almost to the chopper, and then he dies in that movie. But I think we actually lost Robert, so hopefully he'll be able to chime back in a moment here. But what did you feel about the what's a good question here? Oh, the Danny McBride character, the pyromaniac.
That's the wonderful thing about a free market. It turns your pathologies into potential marketable skills. Everybody's got a little niche that they can kind of fill. And if you do it in a free society, then you can find a a pro-social way to get your rocks off to fire.
Well, almost killing Jamie Lee Curtis. Apparently, that was like the one thing that he copped to with the Nick Nolte character.
Everyone has their foibles.
But I also noticed that he had, he said he lost a finger doing his job, and they had a bunch of prosthetics on his ear because I guess he had, the character had been damaged or injured by the pyrotechnics at some point in his past. So they really, covered his history there with building the character. And I thought he was not only one of the funnier characters, but he was also ultimately one of the bigger heroes in the movie, as was McConaughey.
Mm-hmm.
But McBride, he was the only one who had any offensive weapon to actually be able to use, because everyone else in the movie had, blanks. They were firing blanks out of fake guns.
Yeah. And one of my favorite scenes, and we'll get to that in the future. I'm sure it's a lot of people's favorite scenes with the blanks there toward the end.
All right. So, Robert, I think we lost you for a moment, but now you're back.
Yeah, I'm not sure how back I am, but I'm glad to be here.
Well, like I said, you're a great American, and we owe you a huge debt.
Yes, you do.
So, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying I hope my connection lasts. I don't know what's wrong with it, so I apologize.
What do you mean by you people?
I apologize to all of you people.
What do you mean, you people? All right, so we might as well talk about the blackface a little bit now. So the Robert Downey Jr. character, I was reading in some of the lead up to this that it was Ben Stiller's idea for him to portray this role. And I think Downey Jr. was like, I'm not so sure about this. But then they said, if you commit to it, it'll work. And so then he auditioned over the phone his jive talk, like vernacular that he was planning on using, and Stiller was like, perfect. Because again, it's back to what you were saying earlier, Doc. Like everything in this is so over the top that it almost pushes it beyond the realm of being offensive.
Right.
So offensive that it's funny and no longer kind of offensive.
Right.
And I know that's it's a subjective thing, so it's really hard to measure. But I think if we were using the reasonable man doctrine, I think it would apply.
Yeah, very much. I mean, I think if he was just wearing blackface, but not doing the just the ridiculous caricatures of like a deep South African American speech patterns, and the other actor, the rapper turned actor, called him on it halfway through, and he was like, "Oh, should we go down and get some crawfish and collard greens?" And if he hadn't have pushed it so far to the ridiculous, almost like airplane ridiculousness, where they those two African Americans on the plane was having stomach problems, and they were trying to convey that to the stewardess, the flight attendant. It was called stewardess back then, and it's like, "I'm sorry, I don't understand. Does anyone speak jive?" And it was just that level of taking it to that insane level. And I think there's really not that many actors that are good enough that could really do that. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. is excellent, and he played that to perfection. And then he also played during his breakdown later on in the film, he played that to perfection and nailed an Australian accent. I mean, it's just, very good.
Yeah, I love it. I love it in this movie. I don't know how long it'll be before this is seen as problematic, but I don't really give a shit. And I don't think that the Ben Stiller or the co-writers or the creators of this movie ought to care. I think they made the art for the time in which it was made, and you connected with your audience, and they did a successful job, and that's all you got to care about.
Well, I think the other thing that they did well that diffused the tension off of the blackface was that everything was horrible. All the characters, like even at the beginning, like I was saying, this little script, they're the little names of all these other soldiers. They were just calling all sorts of, horribly racist things at that very beginning, and then of course the thing they got the biggest heat for at that time was talking about going full retard. People were really up in arms about that. But yeah, there was just nothing. It wasn't like they were a little bit PC here so that people could really say, well, better because you were PC at this point. You didn't broach this topic. So obviously you should have known this other topic was bad. No, they were just, everything was so over the top. it made it a masterpiece, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love un-PC things, and if anything that PC has done, it has killed comedy today. So I don't really think they would make this movie today just because they would be afraid of all the blue check marks coming out on Twitter and talking about how problematic it would be.
Oh yeah, there'd be a huge amount of self-censorship. I mean, yeah, like you're saying, there's no way they could do this,
right?
And especially not get, what did you say, $80 million of funding to put it out?
Yeah, I think $94 million was the budget.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's gonna fund that if they say, okay, it's gonna start off and there's gonna be somebody in blackface, and then we're gonna talk about we're gonna say the word retard like a dozen times. No,
it is strange how on eggshells a lot of companies are these days with how much they fear the Twitter backlash from like a few hundred people, when they really should more care about how much money the thing is making in, because that's how people vote with their dollars. I mean, it costs nothing to tweet out some dumbass opinion.
Yeah.
Well, it is Pride Month, and it does seem like those same corporations are now like bending over themselves to try to signal that out.
Pride Month at the same time. Come on.
That was a slip. That was a slip there, but
you can't say with the tongue turn. Oh, come on! I'm plugging my ears. La 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 la.
That's right. You can't say anything. Just shut my yap here. But I think that even back in 2008, when this was released, it was still a bit of a hubbub. I know that some of the reviews that it received were critical of the blackface, and the response by Stiller and the other writers was, this is more making fun of the actors who get so engrossed in the becoming the character that they go to extremes. And so we're not making fun of black people or blackface. We're making fun of actors.
Yeah, and that's clear in the film. All these the actors are real, morons who are so self-absorbed with their own lives that they can't actually do their jobs without being thrown into this actual situation.
Right, and I think that applies also to the whole going full retard. Like, I think that they made a great point. Many of the movies that they reference where there's a guy or a character who has some condition or situation that's related, Forrest Gump or Rain Man, those are critically acclaimed performances. And Downey Jr.'s got a point, but if you go full boat, then it's seen as offensive or degrading or horrific, and that's what Simple Jack was, and it got called out as such within the movie. And now that I recall, I think Doc, this is where this came up onto my radar again, was because Shaun White, the professional snowboarder, was catching heat on Twitter last October for his choice in Halloween costume because he dressed as Simple Jack.
Oh yeah, that it's just, I have no words for people that would get upset about somebody dressing up as somebody in a movie that wasn't actually retarded or didn't have any mental handicap.
Well, we have people getting upset about non-gay actors playing gay roles,
right? And then
it's as if you don't actually want actors to have to act.
Yeah. Then there was someone who's going to play the father to the Williams sisters, and they said he wasn't black enough.
Yeah, that was Will Smith.
Will Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could get this charismatic guy, but he's not black enough.
Oh man.
You gotta get Wesley Snipes or Dimajon Hansu or whatever that guy's name is from Gladiator.
Yeah. I mean, you can just see how all of these little things are just really eroding the creation of entertainment and art, because you have no idea like what people are kind of doing as a self-censorship. Like, oh, this would be really great. Oh, I don't know, maybe instead of really kind of going.
That just paralyzes. If they start thinking, oh, what would so and so think about whatever? Are you kidding me? There's people get offended for anything on Twitter and just in general, and some intersectionality piece of crap on BuzzFeed or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So if you live your life trying to please those retards, you're never going to do anything.
Right. Yeah, and speaking of mental retardation, I'm still personally kind of stuck in that, because as I went through med school, that was the term, and now it's intellectually handicapped. I can't even remember, but you'd be treating a patient. They'd have cerebral palsy with mental retardation or cerebral palsy without mental retardation. And it would be MRCP or just CP. And, so it's like, it's really ingrained that, so much so that I'm not quite sure the current word. I'm sure that they've changed the doctor lingo. I don't do, I just do pain management. I don't do the pediatric physical medicine rehabilitation, where you had a lot of cerebral palsy patients and a lot of patients non-cerebral palsy with mental retardation, because Down syndrome and things like that have a fair amount of physical manifestations as well that can limit movement, and so I think it's intellectually handicapped. I don't know, but once again, imbecile, used to be the medical term. Moron used to be the medical term. So
right, that's exactly right. And whenever the term then gets co-opted and used in the eyes of whoever is the dictator of society as offensive, then they change the word in the medical or in the professional arena, and then a few years later, that's the word that crops up on the schoolyard. And so then they keep having to evolve and change it to the next thing, and then it just gets co-opted, and then you can't say anything eventually.
I think they just need to roll it back instead. Like, okay, well, we'll go back to imbecile. We're just going to back it up and just start it over again. And when people start using that again, then we'll move back to mental retardation. And then we'll bounce all the way back to,
looking up, like in a book of insults, that idiot and moron and imbecile, they all actually have technical definitions, I don't remember
moron. They have isn't moron like 50 IQ or whatever? They have certain.
Yeah, and dumb is like can't talk or can't speak, right?
Dumb is you can't speak. Yeah.
Can't. Yeah. Didn't it used to be mentally challenged?
Probably. I don't know that ever. I don't think that was ever in the medical literature, because mentally challenged, that's not very specific at all. I would be. It doesn't sound like something a doctor would come up with, because mentally challenged, what does that mean?
Right. But then it was special needs. But then you call someone special needs, and then they get offended.
Right. But everybody has special needs, and that's also very generic. Like, I have special needs, and I would like those.
Everybody has mental challenges.
Yes, I would like my special needs satiated by the free market.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
you need your jelly beans there, Doc?
Oh man, I need my jelly beans. That's funny, because we're just about to finish off a Costco thing of Jelly Bellies. That thing has been sitting around here for about a year, and just picking away at it. Oh, some friends are coming over, put out a little bowl of jelly beans, and just like, get that thing out of my house. I just, every now and then, I'll grab a little handful. Like, okay, no more than this. But we're finally almost done, and it's out of the house, and I'm like, oh, thank goodness, no more jelly beans to tempt me.
Well, I'm talking about heroin, Doc.
Oh, there's no way. Is jelly beans like a euphemism for heroin?
No, but that's what Jack Black's character was carrying his heroin inside of a jelly bean box.
Oh, doggone it.
And then he kept trying to sneak off and like have some, and then people were like, "Oh, can I have some of those jelly beans?" He's like, "No, you can't have my jelly beans." And then the bat swoops in and takes off with it. And he goes running off in the jungle chasing the bat, and then the bat finally crashes down because it OD'd.
Yes. Sorry, I forgot it's a jelly bean thing. Yes. Oh, thanks for bringing it back to the movie. They did a good job of. They must have some people on staff that have had personal experience with coming down off of opioids, because they really paced that withdrawal pretty well. He's like, oh man, it just, everything was like extra sensitive, and like, just, crawling
skin
out.
Hurts.
Yeah, skin hurts. And that very much is, those opioid receptors have been blocked for so long, and they become hypersensitive. And then, yes, people have a very enhanced ability to sense things, pain, smells, feelings, itchiness, all sorts of things. So yeah,
and doesn't your jaw move a lot? Like I noticed Jack Black was doing that a lot in the movie.
Well, you have all sorts of agitation. Everyone's a little bit different. I wouldn't think the jaw movement is stereotypical for opioid withdrawal. There are some medications that can cause different jaw movements like a tardive dyskinesia, but yeah, just the feeling like ants everywhere and just really needing to move
or needing to take a huge dump. I think that was kept referring to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because opioids are very constipating. And then all of a sudden, all those things are gone, and the bowels are waking up, and they're like, "Whoa, I got a week's worth of poop in here. I move it on out. Yeah, explosive diarrhea, vomiting.
So this is a nice segue back into the drug war, which in the opening, Robert, you were saying that the whole reason that this movie's even a thing is because the poppy farmers here are defending their territory, their land, from what they feel are foreign invaders, probably from the DEA, over in Vietnam or Laos or Myanmar or wherever they are, right? Because I think they're supposed to be shooting the film in Vietnam, but then the Nick Nolte character's like, no, you need to throw them in the shit. And so who knows where they flew them off to.
Right. Yeah. And, a great example of the black market. People excel in the black market when they are willing to be aggressive and violent. And, if you have no natural, spontaneous regulation of your market, and you have to do everything covertly, you are going to necessarily have the most violent and horrific people get to the top. And you see that with the dragons, the golden dragon. Is that who it was?
Yeah, I forget the name of the dragon. They're some colored dragon, right? Weren't they, Dan?
They are golden
What
dragon.
do you mean colored?
But the golden triangle is the real thing, but I don't know about this dragon. I think the dragon thing is made up unnaturally.
Yeah, you see his artwork there, Howard? Doc, you look at them white devil eyes. That was another line that they say in this. I wanted to bring up the sort of offhand remark from Brooklyn, played by Jerry Baruchel, who, while they're trekking off without Stiller, because it's discovered that they're going the wrong way because he doesn't know how to read a map. And even after they tell him that they're going the wrong way because he doesn't know how to read a map, he continues on going the wrong way, and they leave him. And as they're marching back towards what they think is the drop zone where they would be picked up by the helicopter, he has this discussion with the group about Blu-ray versus HD DVD and how gamers and porn won the Blu-ray market, or won the market for Blu-rays, because the Sony PlayStation 3 was a Blu-ray player. And so that's why, even though the technologies were roughly equivalent in how nice they looked and how the audio was, that was what decided it, was gamers and porn. And then, of course, they're like, "Are you talking to me?"
You talking to me the whole time? But yeah, that was a real ad lib, by the way, by that actor.
Oh, okay. Well, it's actually very, very insightful. Peter Klein, whose specialization is Austrian economics and entrepreneurship, he's got a lecture series that I'll post in our show notes page at lastnight.com/77, where he actually talks about how the market determines these things, not necessarily based on what is the best or highest quality or the highest price or the lowest price. It's no one can know what's really going to happen when the market shakes things out, because it's going to be individual consumers making choices for themselves on what's good enough for their dollar. And so, whoever wins out, it's going to be on these kind of like oddball factors sometimes.
Right. And mass adoption helps influence other people's choices.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the reasons why there won't be mass chaos when, we privatize the roads, because people will generally want one road to flow into another road without some jarring change in the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And also when we don't have a monopoly on justice, because as Doc was saying a moment ago, when you don't have above board available means of dispute resolution, then it becomes this mafia type situation where those who are the most capable of violence are the ones who come out on top.
Indeed. And by the way, that anecdote about the Blu-ray topic being an ad lib, you get that on the DVD commentary, in which Robert Downey Jr. does his character throughout the entire commentary. And only breaks at the very, very end, thus making the scene in the movie where he talks about not breaking character until he's done the DVD commentary true. So this is a really nice meta moment if anybody wants to watch that.
Oh, that is great. The HD DVD versus Blu-ray, I was kind of in the thick of that. To get through college and whatnot, in the summers I sold electronics at a kind of a mid-fi electronics store. And so I was there during the transition from Laserdisc over to Blu-ray and HD DVD. And also a big factor was, I think, Blockbuster decided to start carrying Blu-ray for rentals, but not HD DVD. I'll have to go back and kind of look at that. But there were a couple of rental places that said all right, we're gonna have some Blu-rays, and went that way.
Yeah, and that seems like a downstream effect from all the PlayStation 3s that were out there, right? Like if you're a rental business and you're like, all right, we've got these two technologies and we don't want to support both of them, which one is going to have the bigger market share,
right,
or have the most revenue come in from rentals? Well, there's a bunch of these video game systems out there.
Yeah, and that was really huge with the PlayStation. I think Xbox.
There was Xbox with the HD DVD, the Xbox 360.
But I think that didn't you have to get like an add-on or something? Maybe it was just a straight Xbox 360 would run HD DVD or now I can't remember. But yeah, it was the Sony and Xbox kind of battling it out.
Yeah, I think the HD DVD was cheaper to create because it was only like a slightly denser HD, a DVD. But then the Blu-ray was more expensive, but it had more data on it. And I guess Hollywood and porn liked the more data aspect. I don't know.
Anyway,
why wouldn't you? Now. Anyway, that's all moot now. It's all digital streaming, so nobody cares.
All right, I want to bring up the McConaughey character a little bit because when Stiller accidentally kills a panda, and he's known for like supporting panda awareness or save the panda like advertisements and stuff on the back of magazines, he's very saddened by killing it without realizing what it was because he thought he was fighting for his life, and how it's depicted, it looked like he definitely was. And it reminded me of the bear fight at the end of Legends of the Fall, but this one ends up with the bear losing. But when he talks to McConaughey, Pecker, he's like, I killed her. And McConaughey's like, oh my gosh, you killed a hooker? All right, get some bleach and a shitload of lime. He's like going to talk him through like how to get rid of all the evidence and everything. And I don't know, I just, that as fucked up as it is, it like just struck me as funny for some reason.
Yeah, this movie is very funny. Not only is it clever and satirical, it's still funny to this day, as long as you're not some overly offended snowflake.
Right. It also goes to show the depths of the relationship that he has, Pecker and Tug. Oh, wait, I think I just got a joke there. Right?
Yes, Tug and Pecker, yes.
Yeah, because they're like best friends or whatever.
They call them Tuggernuts.
Yeah, that's right.
Rum-tum Tuggernuts, that's right.
But that just shows the depth of the relationship, and it makes the moral conundrum as presented by the Tom Cruise character a little bit more believable. Because when Tug is going the wrong way, as we talked about, when they show him on the map, hey, you're going the wrong way, and he continues going the wrong way. He finally gets captured by the heroin guys, the Golden Dragons or whatever they are, and they want to ransom him. And as part of the deal, the what's his name? Les
Grossman.
Les Grossman. He's such a pompous ass, and he has no time for anybody. So he is just really expletive laden and very abrasive. And they're like demanding money, and he's like, "Fuck you!" and stick it up your fucking ass. And I'm going to call the UN to rain fire on you because they're going to need a cease and desist resolution to make me stop from killing you or some shit. I can't even do it justice, but that was a case of like they had miscommunicated, like they didn't know what was going on at that time, that it was really a hostage situation. But then that eventually leads to the hostage situation, which I know, Robert, you wanted to kind of break down a little bit here.
Well, I do. I want to talk about if Grossman is actually in the wrong in any way by not offering up to pay money to release the hostage, because McConaughey is very much kind of upset about the whole situation. He feels, obviously it's his friend and he's not going to sell him out, or he's not going to leave him out hanging in the breeze, so to speak. And he wants Grossman. It's not exactly clear what he wants Grossman to do, but he thinks that somehow paying the ransom is some sort of an obligation that Grossman has. And he's kind of horrified that Grossman's like, nah, we'll just let them kill him and we'll take out an insurance policy on him and we'll end up making more money in the long run.
And we'll open a scholarship or something.
Yeah, we'll open a scholarship in his honor, whatever. And you'll by going along, you'll get a bunch of money and a new jet. And, you won't be able to live with yourself, but, whatever.
I can tell you guys had Walter Block on defending the undefendables.
Absolutely. Because a couple of years back, the story came out that Walmart was taking out life insurance policies on their employees. And that when an employee would die, they'd cash in this policy and actually make some money. And they took a lot of heat for it. But why shouldn't they? It's absolutely in their own economic interests to take out these policies on their employees. When one of them dies, they have to replace them. It costs money to replace an employee, train a new employee. And just like that, Grossman is in the same situation. In fact, he probably has insurance policies on every production he makes. Sure. And different insurance companies, probably if you're shooting in X place, it's going to give you this rate, and you have all these stars, and it's going to be this much. Well, you have a lot of money at stake, and a lot of money is a lot of people's time and energy. And the bad guys in this situation, well, I mean, it's not clear because they're defending their property from an invading army. But then when it's clear that they're just actors stumbling onto their property, they're probably the bad guys at that point.
I would say yes.
Demanding ransom.
Yeah.
But so if they end up the ones killing Tug, they're the bad guys, not Grossman. I mean, does anybody have any differing opinions or any nuance they want to add to this? I think Grossman is, other than like bribing Tug to be quiet about the whole situation. Or no, not Tug. What is it? Tug?
Pecker.
Who's Pecker. But that's kind of slimy. But
here's
go ahead.
Another thought experiment off of that. In libertarian or anarchist circles, we talk oftentimes a lot about how sometimes the underlying enforcement of social order could potentially come from insurance companies. And this is a wonderful example of who do you think is going to be better at figuring out the truth of what happened? Some random FBI agent who's overloaded, or the people at the insurance company that are about to put out $100 million for this loss. Aren't they really going to be digging in? All right, well, let's see. What communications did you have with Tugman? When did you know he was in danger? They're going to get to the bottom of this pretty darn efficiently. And I think that it would be very difficult in actuality for this Les Grossman to get full payment on that death, because it potentially could have been preventable if the insurance company had a financial stake in it and there was an option to pay for the release, and he wouldn't have been killed. They should have been in on that financial decision and that conversation. And so by withholding that information from the insurance company, I think it's going to be pretty quick that the insurance company is going to sniff out, okay, why on earth was this person down there? Why was he captured? How was he captured? Did you have any kind of contact with him? If you take kind of that same concept of, okay, these people are being greedy. Greed is kind of an inherent human nature. And then you kind of flip it. Okay, so this is somewhat of a decision in the free market. You have an insurance that's going to pay out. It's going to buffer or potentially offset all the losses in this film. And then the only oversight that you have is the insurance company. I feel that insurance company is going to be very good at finding out what's going on because they do not want to pay that out. If you take that and move that over into the government sphere, and you have the exact same type of a conversation with, let's say, a general and a lieutenant, and they're in the military, and it's talking about Syria. And this lieutenant comes up and is like, hey, you're going to tell me that we are going to aid and abet Al-Qaeda in Iraq in order to help us defeat ISIS, who we just supported before to help cut down the insurgency in Iraq, but they overgrew, and so now we're going to support Al-Qaeda? And then the general's like, all right, now it's time to see if you're a player. And then they're not going to play that rap song, but they might play Rock You Like a Hurricane or something like that. So if you can just imagine your Rock You Like a Hurricane going on in the background, he's like, all right, it's the reward room. Tell me what you want. And you want a corner office? Oh, yeah, you can have a corner office. You want your own command? I'm going to turn you into a colonel. And then the Pecker character would be like, you mean to tell me that I'm going to stand in front of my troops and tell them that we're going to support the people? And I just lost some troops to those very same people, and now we're going to support them just so I could become a colonel, a full bird colonel. It's like, playa, but who, that type of a discussion, surely goes on. But who's going to really dig in to the government to find out the truth of that matter? I mean, the press, they get access and privileges to the inner circle the more that they kind of play along. And they just don't have their incentives aligned correctly in order to really dig into this. It's only the independent media that's really kind of dug in to figure out all of these different intricacies of, okay, well, we were, supporting this type of jihadist. Now we're supporting that type of jihadist to get rid of these other jihadists that we accidentally created. So I don't know. I have very little trust in the greedy portion of human nature, other than if we can align that greed in a way that's pro-social, that the acceptable things that we create with greed are kind of regulated by other actors in kind of an open way. Once you
market forces, basically,
right, market forces. I mean, once you start to kind of obscure that with the force of government, it ramps up the consequences. And so you're talking about this greed leading potentially to Tug Speedman's death versus the greed that our politicians have shown leading to 1 million Iraqi deaths.
All right, I think I'm following what you're saying here. It's a little long, so I'm going to have to try to process it for a moment. But I think what you're saying is that in the insurance situation, there is a market actor, market consequence, or a market check on the behavior of Les Grossman. And that's why he has to try to buy off the McConaughey character, because the insurance company is sure as shit going to investigate this situation and make sure that it is a valid claim that they're going to have to pay out. And if they find anything that is inconsistent with the narrative, including, all those things that you listed, they're not going to pay it out. And so they're going to find out that Grossman is trying to commit insurance fraud. Conversely, in the government situation, there is no separate actor that's really a check on that situation. It's more obscured and protected under the veil of government or military secrecy. And so any human nature situation that arises is going to be exacerbated by the ability to more get away with it. And then you're going to have worse outcomes than if it were in a market-based situation where there were consequences to actions.
What you said. Correct.
All right. I think I figured it out. All right. Robert, any comment to that? And then we'll start probably doing some final summary stuff here.
Well, I just want to agree with everything you guys have said, not to be lame or anything, but you were all correct on what you were talking about. Just to add to this idea that, I think there's a certain amount of distaste that comes on when you talk about taking out an insurance policy or a life insurance policy on an actor or an employee, and then you put them in a situation where there's a chance that they could die. There's a chance that anybody could die at any time. Making money off of the death, it's not, they could say that there's some sort of conflict of interest, but it's just you're protecting. And I suppose, you could, if you're an angry spouse and you take out an insurance policy on your husband and then you get him murdered or whatever, then you collect the money. Yeah, of course, that's immoral and horrific, but there's nothing wrong with protecting against loss by, managing your risk. It seems to me that making money off of death seems distasteful to people because making money off of human misery is distasteful to people. And I think it's just a fundamental misunderstanding of who makes money off of human misery. I don't know if you guys saw the first season of Iron Fist. I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before. I've probably talked about it to people, but in the, Danny Rand is this off on this mystical journey, and he's this monk with this power to punch people really hard. And he comes back to the Western world, to his fame and fortune, where he's the owner now of Rand Chemical or Rand Incorporated or whatever. And they make pharmaceuticals. And they're talking about this new drug in this boardroom, and the kind of quote bad guy is talking about selling it for a really high rate. And Rand's like, what? Then the people wouldn't be able to afford it who need it. We can't make money off of human misery. We're going to make it, we're going to sell it at cost, which, is just stupid for a bunch of reasons. The profit you make off of this product is going to fund new research, and it's going to be a market signal that you're doing a good thing, and on and on and on. But saying that you profit off of human misery and therefore it's immoral to do it is a fundamental misunderstanding of who profits off of human misery. Farmers profit off of human misery because it's miserable to be hungry. Doctors, Doc Anarchy, Profits off of human misery because it's miserable to be sick and in pain.
Looking at you, buddy.
I literally stick needles in people, causing them pain.
He causes them pain, and he only gets business when you feel crappy.
Yeah.
So he profits off of your misery. Home builders profit off of human misery because it's miserable to be homeless. It goes on and on and on. Pretty much everybody profits off of human misery. So it's just this virtue signaling by dumb people really annoys me. Like I said, that's my entire point.
Well,
looking
at it the wrong way. Like you're profiting because you're solving the problem. You're making somebody's situation better off than before. That's what motivates them to take you up on that offer. It's mutually beneficial exchange. You're offering something that they think is going to make them better off, and they're willing to trade their dollars for the thing that you're offering, and vice versa.
Right, because happiness is a scarce resource like everything else. And if you're offering something that contributes towards happiness or satisfaction, is another way to put it.
Yeah, so these are all just glass half full communists or economic ignoramuses or dummies or retards, morons. They're morons.
Full retard.
Well, one place that happiness was not a scarce resource was in my house watching this movie.
Nice way to bring it back.
Yeah, thank you for making it me happy.
In my mind movies.
Oh, we got to talk about my favorite line, which is the lead farmer. They go when he was confronting. He was like, "What kind of farmer are you?" And it's like, farm, and he whips out those guns. And I'm a lead farmer, motherfucker. Oh, man, that just cracked me up so bad. I don't know why.
Yeah, that quote is featured prominently in that song I was telling you about. That is in the credits. So
it's strong.
Definitely check that out. I have one final note before we get into final summary and review, and that is related to the Stockholm syndrome that is displayed by the Tug Speedman character after he is taken in and tortured and then forced to replay his Simple Jack character on a nightly basis while being abused. And then he feels like he has now become one of them. And when the other actors show up to save him, he doesn't want to go. And then there's this confrontation with the Robert Downey Jr. character, who also sort of breaks down and like has a bit of a crisis of his identity. And then he too is also not wanting to leave. And, Stockholm syndrome is definitely a thing. It's like you start to feel sympathies or identify with your captors, and this bond forms. And I wonder if it's related to, how in like fraternities, they'll haze, or in the military, you go through like boot camp together, and then those guys become your brothers because you went through a traumatic experience together. I wonder if it's like a similar type of situation, not like totally identical, but you go through some kind of mental anguish or pain together, some suffering together, both in those fraternity things, and then also, as with the Stockholm syndrome situation. And I think I'll spin this one to you, Doc, because you might know a bit more about this.
Maybe that's why the progressives are so cohesive right now in their hatred of Trump. That was such a traumatic experience when he won that they're like, and they're all coming together with group identity.
It's like when you have the drill sergeant that everybody hates, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am not well versed in Stockholm syndrome, but it definitely is a thing that's very real. And oftentimes what abusers will do in any type of abuse situation or mind control type situation is to always tell the truth to your captive. Like, okay, I'm going to beat you now. Food's going to be delivered at this time, and it's only going to be this, and da-da-da-da-da. And so their perception of who they can trust is altered and disturbed. And once that trust is established, then the emotion of attachment comes along with it. And so, if you ever want to manipulate people, that's your little ticket.
All right, this should be behind the paywall, everyone. I'll preview for you.
We'll abuse them later, and then they'll. But that's the thought anyway, as far from my recollection, as far as how these cults, Stockholm syndrome, abusive relationships, all of that kind of can come in. It does oftentimes have pain, trauma, shared suffering and routine, pattern, and telling the truth by the captor of. So what becomes comfortable is that pattern and honesty, and then once something doesn't fit that, even if that is someone coming to save you, that break in the pattern, that break in the idea of what's true, creates a lot of cognitive dissonance, and people just can't really accept it, and they stick with their captors or their abusive husbands or their cult. It's sad.
Until they have a 2-year-old on their back stabbing them in the neck. And then they toss them off the bridge, and then they blow the bridge. Anyway, why don't we get into some final summaries and reviews? And Robert, why don't you show our guests the pattern, and then give a rating 1 through 10, a decimal point deep, and then we'll go to Doc Anarchy, and I'll close it out.
Okay, as long as you guys don't mind my cat grinding on my microphone. It might be bumping a little bit. She's really excited to be here. So Tropic Thunder, man, when I first saw this movie, I loved it. Loved everything about it. And rewatching it, I've seen the movie multiple times over the years, and the laughter has gone kind of pretty much away for the most part. There's still a few good lines that really still get me, but it doesn't diminish my appreciation. It's mostly just because, all humor, the 500th time you've seen the same joke, you're not going to laugh as hard as you did the first time you heard it. It's not a slight against the film. This movie isn't necessarily meant to be seen as many times as I've seen it. And I've seen it that many times just because it's so quality. I mean, and everything it does, everything it's trying to do as a send-up of modern movie making, as the egos of the actors involved and all their little insulated issues, and how the one actor who's actually trying, well, there's the super dedicated actor, the Robert Downey Jr. character, but then there's the young up-and-coming actor who's really, this is his big shot. And so he actually tries. He goes to the boot camp, and he reads the script, and he reads the book the movie's off of. And all these established actor guys, they're just like, what? Why would you ever do that? I make, blah, 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 and I'm here to, use my brand to really upgrade and blah, blah, blah. All that business. So it's a fun send-up of that, and I really enjoyed it still. If you haven't seen the film, or if you've just seen it a few times, yeah, it's definitely worth a rewatch. I can't imagine the mindset of the human being that would be offended by watching it, but I know those people exist. I just think they're miserable people. It's my own opinion, but this is a fantastic film. Definitely worth a see, and I can't give anything under an 8. It's just so good. 8.1. Great film. Doc?
Scale of 0 to 10. Is it specifically within the comedy genre or just movie in general?
Whatever you want, baby.
7-8.
All right, a man, a few words at the end here. 7.8. All right, and I'm going to agree with Robert. This is the type of movie that it goes so over the top that it goes beyond the point of offense, and it actually becomes funny because they go to such extremes. And I think that would be a challenge to do a movie like this today. And I'm a bit surprised that these actors of today don't get this movie and other things they've done in the past dredged up, as we seem to see every now and again on Twitter and other areas where, this person starred in this movie 35 years ago and it had racial overtones and therefore this person is bad. Somehow these guys get a pass, and I'm not exactly sure why, but I do appreciate that they did make this movie, and I really enjoyed it. I saw it when it first came out, and then I rewatched it again for the second time just last night, and there were still plenty of laughs for me. So I'm going to go with a 7.7 to go with our episode 77 of Last Nighters. Show notes and more at lastnighters.com/77. Now, Robert, next week.
So is the next movie going to get a 7.8, Daniel? Is that what's going on here?
I think you're noticing a pattern here. And it might, but the critics, as Doc was saying at the beginning here, critics can be harsh where audiences like something. But next week, we're doing a movie that not only the critics hated, but so did audiences. It is going to be Batman v Superman, which got shit on and upon in both areas.
And rightfully so. Although I haven't seen the extended cut, and our guest claims, this is a bold claim, by the way, and
very
bold claims require bold evidence. He claims that this movie, in the director's extended version, whatever, is a masterpiece, or very close to a masterpiece. I'm sure he's going to have a few quibbles. But I remember watching the film in its original shortened theatrical format and just being horrified by how terrible it was. But we'll see. Maybe it all comes together in the extended cut. I don't know. I'm eager to find out.
It'll be amazing if 12 added minutes on top of the 2+
can polish a turd
of misery that you went through will actually turn that turd into a golden nugget. So we will see next week with our guest Shaheen, who is returning. He's our Batman guy. We had him on for Dark Knight Rises, and Batman Return. Which one was it? The animated one, Dark Knight Returns. That was a good
yeah. It's the 2-part version that tells basically the Dark Knight Returns. Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns.
Right. Yeah. So he's really good. He's our Batman guy. So he'll be back with us next week on episode 78 of the show, Dark Knight or Batman versus.
There's no way that movie's going to get a 7.8 from you. There's no freaking way, but we'll find out.
We will find out. I'll be watching it in the next couple of days and we'll find out. So anyway, that's about going to wrap it up for us at The Last Nighters over here. So our guest has been Doc Anarchy. You can find his website and his soon-to-be show at honoringronpaul.com. Any final words, Doc, for our audience before we say goodnight?
Great movie. And, the Tom Cruise cameo, unannounced that Tom Cruise was in there. I didn't even recognize him for most of the movie. If he was ever going to win an Academy Award, it should have been for Tropic Thunder.
I agree.
Yeah.
He was also
he's
good in Australia.
Yeah, he's almost unrecognizable. He does a great blowhard movie producer guy.
I'm sure he's encountered a few. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us here. So I'll say good night from last night, everyone.
In the early days of the internet, radical libertarians were scattered, lonely, and faceless. Without direction, they resigned to scour the web, sifting through content providers in a wasteland plagued by YouTube demonetization, Facebook jail, and covert internet censorship. But then, in 2017, the Libertarian Union was formed. Finally, the average Joe libertarian could find a thriving community of independent podcasters and content providers, all in one convenient location. At Libertarian Union, we'll always have the latest news, interviews, discussions, and even movie reviews. With hundreds of episodes and more added all the time, you'll always find something fresh at libertarianunion.com.